What up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of Winning by Awesomeness. That's not the name of this. Durable by Design. Appreciate y'all coming here. This is where we learn about how to scale service agencies. Here with Crispy, as always. How you doing?
Good. Very excited.
Today we're going to talk about a concept. We're going to riff on it. About, I think something we both share is why, at least a portion of, and a way of a frame of looking at why agencies get fired. And I think it's really important we think about agencies in the context as FTEs and people, because you're doing you're hiring for some job, and often you're always in competition with should I hire an FTE to do that, or should I not? And it's a perennial issue. It's a perennial thought that you can't pretend doesn't exist. So within that lens, I have this statement that I think, 10 out of 10 conviction, and you may not be as high, and you can argue with it, is agencies don't get fired for bad work. They get fired because they make clients think they could have done the job without them.
I agree and I disagree at the same time. I agree in the sense of customers will actively choose not to renew engagements because they feel that they have a deep understanding of how to do the work, therefore they do not need the agency at that point, right? I think that's one facet. Number two is I did lots of reconfiguration projects and engagements when I was a HubSpot partner, and it was because other partners did do bad work, like directly. And I don't think it's a matter of you get fired solely because they think that they could, the customer thinks they could do it. I think there is certain evidence that there are lots of agencies that do bad work. That's why people hate agencies, right? Because there's a negative connotation in the sense of agencies suck the blood out of the customer and don't add value to the business. So yes, and is my response.
Received. I think it's a very helpful framework. Does it apply with all scenarios? No. Is it very helpful? Yes. Is any time, I think it's really important, any agency owner, anywhere you are, is at any given time, you're being considered to be replaced. Whether they say it to your face or not, behind closed doors, they are considering it. I know that, having running Supered, I'm thinking about agencies. And my constant thought is FT or not. When I was running head of director of operations and I had to bring people in, am I hiring a full-time SEO person or am I not? So, and sometimes people do bad work. But I think it's so important people think of this is how you make clients feel will determine how much value they think you're creating often. And so bad work is not always necessarily bad work. It may be I don't like working with you. Yeah. So I think there's just relational. So how do people get fired? It's like they think they could do it without you. And so how do you organize? If that's a true statement. How do I organize? That's a true statement. And this previous episode, we talked about story brand. So I think it's so important your go-to-market and your operations speaking the same language, solving the same problems.
Yeah.
And what you're giving as an agency is saying, I have intellectual property and experience about a problem set that I can do either better or I can do faster because of my IP and framework and because of my training.
Yep.
And if they question that means they don't want to hire you, they want to fire you, and they want to replace you either with another agency that says they have a better framework and they have more experience, or with a person they can do. And I would treat agencies and FTEs pseudo in the same bucket because they're always being considered in the same thought.
Yeah, I agree. And I think this, two things. One, I think lots of agencies use the value prop of, well, hiring us is cheaper than a full-time employee.
Yeah.
All the time, right? Yeah. Which further contributes to this parallel struggle of, do I do this or do I do this? And ultimately, the thing that it comes down to is, are you doing a cost analysis between these two things and expect the same amount of value between those two? If so, that means you're not selling right to that like end customer, because you should not be beaten by a full-time employee in the amount of value that you're providing to the customer. Like,
Yes, and I think that's a really, really good point, and it's hard to say. And I think there's always it's easy to fall into because it's an easy way to justify. So I'll give an example. When I was at Rev Partners, one of the way we would come in is we would say, we would never compare ourselves as a FTE to us. Mm-hmm. Say we're cheaper. We would say you get a full RevOps department that can answer a larger set of questions because you have to have that.
yep,
Than if you were to have for the cost of an FTE.
yeah,
And I think it's important to compare value and what things you can do. So we would say things like, not only can I do more, I know the order in which you should do them.
yes,
And thus I am de-risking what I'm actually doing. You could get a brand new person, but they're going to make more mistakes and they're going to cost you about the same.
yeah,
So my value and cost, I didn't decrease cost. It was more money off sometimes.
yeah.
But I increased value 3 to 2x of that. That's a really, really good point. And you must position that way if you want to have large retainers or large contracts.
Oh, I totally agree with you. And I had this conversation today with, it must have been 4 different partners, where they're echoing adding value beyond what an FTE would be. To me, screams that you have to think about the larger picture beyond what the function of a full-time employee would do. In the sense of, if you're just sending emails, you're just going to get paid to send emails. But like, I think about this in the HubSpot scenario where a lot of smaller partners have issues building recurring revenue and doing HubSpot onboarding and implementation. They treat it as a project because they think it has a definitive start and a definitive end. And therefore, that's their job. And they're like, well, why should I convert to a retainer when I've done this thing? And the thing that I've been educating these partners on is you need to think about the bigger picture beyond that, because HubSpot is like a step in the journey to a much larger struggle and a much larger mission that they're experiencing. And so that's where going beyond the FTE value, it's going beyond the problem set, beyond the solutions that you're providing, and going to the next level inside of the business.
And where does that start? That starts at, I'm not going to say it starts at the website. We just did the story. Where that starts is, I think, the narrative and the problem you are solving is actually outside the website. It's out, and it's like your business as an agency, very specifically, your business has a point of view, and you're telling a larger story. HubSpot CRM implementation is a point in time inside that journey, and you have to decide where, like, what you fit within it and where you are. Let me give you an example. So I was working with an agency and helping them think about their narrative, and we hit on this. It is CROs have an 18th month life cycle. They're the quickest to get fired in the entire executive team. So the day they start, they have a terminal illness that they have been given that you are going to die in 18 months.
Yeah.
Every moment you have is either getting you to where you can live past that date or helping you plan for your funeral. That's a narrative. And I have yet, like, that's a narrative. And then you can build a business and you could go, here are the problems. Here's why. Go to market's supposed to be easier. There's more. AI's here. But it's less efficient. What's wrong? And then you have a guide. I do know what's wrong. Here's the guide. Here's our 5-step process that will help you do it. It starts here, goes here, and then you have adoption as a service post to intend. So it's like this, but the narrative matters so much, and that's what I see missing. And in this, you're not an FTE. You must be thinking bigger than the FTE problem, or you're going to get fired like an FTE. Must make people think, if I don't have them, I don't know what I'm going to do next.
Yeah, I totally agree. And I think talking about like impact moments, if I was a solutions partner or a provider, offering services at all, especially in the world of CRMs. We'll talk about HubSpot as the use case. When someone wants to implement HubSpot, let's say an end customer chooses, hey, I'm down for HubSpot, please onboard me onto the CRM. It's like, okay. Usually their driving force behind wanting to onboard and implement is not, I want HubSpot. It's, I want to see the data that my sales team is spitting out and be able to take actions upon that to increase my revenue performance in the business. So doing just the HubSpot implementation and treating that as like the starting and ending point means you're missing out on the much bigger picture that's up here. And so this is what I've been trying to tell partners is like in the step-by-step journey being the guide, it's thinking about, okay, this is one starting point of a much larger journey because now we're unlocking the ability for you to take action upon this data. So let's think about what are we going to analyze? How are we going to fill your pipeline? How are we going to then take action upon your processes, focus on adoption, and build the full cycle of the engagement where we have, let's do this now and think about the next and think about the later as a future opportunity and begin to map out the pathway entirely.
Yes. So let's go back to this statement. I think Crispy agrees with it more now than he did, which is great. Agencies don't get fired for bad work.
Yeah.
You get fired for making clients think they could have done it without you. And I think the key point, and I think what allowed us to get to a point where I think we both we were saying the same thing in a way, is the narrative you operate in is so important.
Yep.
Because if you are just a HubSpot implementation, I'm going to tell you right now, almost everyone's going to say, there's a high 70% probability, even if you do good work, they will think, I could have done it without them. I could have got an FT. And that's what you want to not have happen. Live in a larger narrative, and you will live in larger service deals.
Yeah, I totally agree with that.
Okay, Crispy, tell everybody why you wear a watch.
Oh, timepieces are a lost art. The technical and mechanical art form of building timepieces is incredible. If you're not into, like, what I encourage everyone to do, if you're not into watches, buy a kit where you can make one yourself, and you'll have an incredible appreciation for the art form that it is. Those that use their phone to look at the time, like, that's fine, that's convenient, but timepieces are beautiful, and it's truly an art form.
Thank you, Crispy. I now want to go buy a watch. Look at you making. Look, you're telling me a narrative. I don't even know what problem I'm fixing. But appreciate everybody. Everybody, thank you for joining us. Keep doing it big. Never stop believing, and stay super. Adios, everybody.